All right, let's go ahead and get started. So, hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. Happy Wednesday. So, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about enablement. And there's a little bit of a crisis happening as folks are, looking at tech stack consolidation, tech tool consolidation, tech spend consolidation. And a lot of people, Vic, you'll feel this pain slightly as a reminder, but a lot of people had heavy tech stacks and underwhelming results. And I know when we first met, it was interesting how we met, a little bit, but you quickly were able to articulate the issues that you had. And I'll just before we even get into the story, why don't you do a quick introduction for the group? We have it up on screen, but if you do a quick introduction, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Happy to be here. Thanks, Ron. Vic Bowers. I'm with Spectrio. We're a customer engagement solution provider. I'm the VP of Marketing and Sales Enablement. So I wear a few different hats here and been with the company about 3.5 years and seen quite a bit of growth, some through acquisition and some through just channel partner relationships and growing business.
Awesome. Appreciate you being here, Vic. As you know, as I said, we started a little auspiciously over a bet, a friendly wager, if you will. But I feel like we've grown to be good friends, and I appreciate the partnership and friendship. And for the folks on the webinar, I'm Ron. I run sales for GTM Buddy. I was also a customer before that, and I've known our founder Shooter for about 20 years. This is our third company together. Privileged to work with him as well. So Vic, let's just start at the beginning. So when you started looking at tools and you started evaluating, your stack, were there signals that you saw or that you felt were like blinking loudly that it was time to potentially make a change?
I think if I go back before when I started here, we had nothing, right? There was no enablement platform. It was sales enablement was a new venture for the company, which was really, it used to be just sales leaders did everything.
Yep.
And so having a background in training as well as being a frontline sales leader and salesperson myself, it was a nice change of pace, but I knew that my work was cut out for me when they showed me the Google Drive that everybody used to house anything and everything, right? And just watching and shadowing some of the reps and their struggles with how do I know what to share when, what's the latest, greatest source of truth, what's applicable, how much information do I need going into this call? I'm not prepared. I'm just going to wing
Mhm.
it. My first step was we made our first investment in doing, it took me a year to get budget approval to get an enablement platform, but it
Wow.
didn't do everything I wanted it to do. So fast forward almost 2 years later, and my agreement with the legacy platform is coming up for renewal, and I felt like we didn't take advantage. Some on us had grand ideas and not enough manpower to execute on, but that was part of the problem as well, right? We didn't have a lot of resources as a partner to stand it up properly. So it became a glorified Google Drive over time. Like adoption spiked, because it was the new shiny toy. But at the end of the day, one of the biggest pain points I had was people still looked at it through the lens of it's another system I have to log into.
Hmm.
Need to go find the stuff myself. It's not easily or readily available at my fingertips. And it's just too hard unless you got it into your daily routine over time, no matter how much reinforcement you do, it's hard to get them back. And that was the biggest piece to me. And I think when you and I started talking, Ron, it was the think like a salesperson again. Like Vic, put yourself back in their shoes. Would you use this platform if you're in their situation? They're already having to log into their CRM and do all that. There's other systems we have that they have to log in, and if you're like me, you keep your passwords everywhere. You don't, it's not, if it's not seamless and easy, they're not going to use it. So that was why we felt like it was a time to evaluate what we were paying for. And it was very
Yep.
expensive.
Yep. Was AI also part of it? I know we're going to get to that in a minute, but was the thought of AI starting to creep in, of people talking about it and making lives easier?
Yeah, I don't know if it came front and center until I saw what was possible, right? So I
Yep.
think it was one of those where I kept asking our previous provider, what are you guys doing? And they keep talking about AI. And I'm like, great, can't wait to see it. And they're like, well, here's your proposal to add it. And so it was an add-on cost, and a lot of businesses operate that way, but I wanted it baked into the solution because I knew how, after seeing the demo and what GTM Buddy brought to the table with that, I was like, I have to have it. Like it's a no-brainer, and that's been the biggest source of adoption is it makes it easy.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you for that, Vic. We'll move on. So here's what we're going to talk about today. Certainly not going to be a pitch heavy slide. We did spend a lot of time on that first slide. That's the longest we'll spend on any slide. We are going to talk about the shift from legacy to AI first. And that is, this has been, I was talking to somebody yesterday, Vic, and I said, has there been a shift like this between, like the last one I remember was the SaaS days, the cloud days. And
Mhm.
somebody said there was a data-driven shift in the 2015 type era. And I said, it must not have worked because I don't remember it. And they said, nope, it didn't. So, I mean, we really haven't had this since like the early 2000s where we've had such a big shift from existing tools. And I'm not sure how many people in the market remember that. I certainly do. I don't know how many are, but we're going to talk about that. We do want to talk about your journey, especially the first 100 days, because I think there's a lot of people in the market, as there was in the SaaS cloud days, that are like, when's the right time to change? Is AI going to continue to grow by leaps and bounds if we just wait another 6 months? Can I make do? How do I do change management? So we'll talk about that. That's a lot of stuff. And I think you're even prepared to talk about, like, even show some of your stuff, which is awesome. I am going to show a couple of the use cases, and then we'll just see what kind of questions come up, etc. So we'll do it together. It'll be a good journey with both of us, not talking about slides. Um, I think if I show you this slide, what you're probably going to say to me is this was, I think you did say this when we started talking about like the challenge you were facing. I think I showed you the slide and you were like, yes, discovery done. This is the problems we're having. But we've seen this routinely that, and you just talked about it, is reps can't find what they need. And everything, and we have access, connectors were harder. Now we can get at everything. The silos, so LMS and CMS are still separate things, and they're definitely not sales tools. LMS is still for HR and CMS is still for product marketing. This one you talked about, and I'll just hammer on top of, but adoption is I would say pathetic or dismal. But if you're not seeing 80 to 90% adoption in today's market, then it isn't good. And what would you remember what you guys roughly were back in the day when you were using your existing tool?
Yeah, I think we peaked at like 68%, and then it got down to like 47% towards the tail end.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. You're paying a lot. If you looked at a pay per click, it would be like terrible. And then the other thing that I know we talked about was just the amount of work it takes to keep those systems up and running. Like the slide says tool built for admins, not reps. I would say it's built for process, not reps or admins. But did you also, what was the struggle like for y'all with the existing tools on just administering it?
Yeah, I think the biggest lift on our end was anytime we wanted to do something, it's like, how do we make it translate into the platform, right? It shouldn't be as hard as it was. It's almost like you had to learn the system itself. And so if I had that knowledge leave my organization, it was a gap that we had to retrain somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to call that. Remember back in the day, we used to call that beer truck risk. Somebody step off a curb and get hit by a beer truck, and all of a sudden that knowledge left your org. That was the SaaS and cloud discussion. We used to do it then. With AI, it's getting even worse. I told this joke the other day, but AI being an afterthought, and somebody said, "What does that actually mean?" I said, "Do you remember in the '80s when Saab tried to come out with a convertible? The Miata came out, it was super popular, and Saab came up with the Saab 900 convertible. Do you remember that car?"
Hmm.
They literally took a Saab, cut the top off, and called it a convertible. I was like, genius. They did have a convertible, but it leaked, wasn't structurally sound. And I feel like AI is the same way. Everybody's talking about it, but when you really dive in, is it ingrained or is it just an add-on? And then lastly, and we see this on a minute by minute basis, the need for speed and to get information to the reps and just in time, it's greater than ever. Because like we're reviewing deals with sellers the second they're done, and we're all getting Slack feeds of how the call went. And then they're like, great, what do you want me to do about it? And so we're really struggling getting stuff back to them. So I think this is what we're going to show and this is what we're going to talk about. But I know this is a lot of what you dealt with as well. So should be a great convo. Um, just look through this. I think you answered all this. Well, yeah, you were down to about 48%. And so I think this all ties into what you had talked about a minute ago.
Yeah, no, it's all there.
Yeah. Okay. And so a lot of this, tell me how did you know though that it was time? Because like the top ones, a lot of it's like you, right? Like, or you or your team. But at what point did leadership say, like, was there a defining moment where they were like, we get a new competitor and we can't train fast enough, or we got new messaging and we got to get it to the field? Like, was there a moment or did they just, like, I also talked to a CFO and he's like, I'm just not paying for it anymore. Like, cut it in half and you can keep it.
Yeah, I think I tried to keep a pretty good pulse on it so that it didn't ever really escalate to the level where I was like, you have to do something about this. It was my own alarm bells that were going off.
Okay.
And when we'd had a transition in sales leadership, and when I couldn't get that individual or the new people in place because we had a few changes along the way, if I couldn't get them in the platform using it, it was a losing battle for them to reinforce it with their teams. So it was basically trying to demonstrate ROI, and I was losing that fight in my head and with my own team, because then it's the other part is uh, the marketing assets that we're spinning up for
Yeah.
sales and trying to equip them and then seeing it not get used, because we could look at the stats and say, well, why are we spending so much time and effort over here?
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Awesome. So let's talk about this. I mean, I'll take this slide and just do it quickly, but this is what we're seeing as the new paradigm for enablement. We've always done the left side pretty well. So learning systems, LMSs have been in place for a while. The new differences is the ability to actually allow the reps to practice and fail, not making our prospects crash test dummies. Like I actually had a CEO and he's like, we generate enough leads. I don't need to train anybody. We could just lose deals. And I was like, as the CRO, that made no sense to me. Like, I'm like, no, if we actually won them. But how do you do role play at scale with all the different scenarios and have, we had 100 people, Vic, creating role play scenarios. That's insane. Not everybody's going to do that. But in general, folks are doing a decent job here. They're also all looking at calls and analyzing how are folks doing in general. The part that we really see the struggle with is how do we reinforce it? How do we enforce and reinforce it to make sure it's not just a training class or a Thursday morning hourly thing? How do we enforce and reinforce medic and sales plays and methodology when they're out doing their own thing, when they're out in the wild? And then following on to that is how do we activate it, right? So like, how do we truly get to the point where active listening isn't just I'll mute my phone and come back after the prospect's done, but I actually listen. Active being the part of not muting your phone and listening, of actually listening and writing stuff down. And so this is the new paradigm, is the ability to train folks, have it be reinforced and practiced and learned all the different methods of doing that, then getting it just in time and in their workflow, and then being able to look at how are they actually performing. And that's what we'll cover today. So in the demo, this is what we're going to talk about. So 4 things. So we're going to talk about governing content. I think this is about where you guys are kind of right in here, Vic, on your journey. So setting it up, getting the tagging done, getting the content right, and providing it for them in their workflow. And I know you and I talked about this yesterday, but I thought this was a funny one, which is, we measure success in 50% of the team's time not answering basic Slack messages, right? So, Vic, where's the case study? Vic, where's the training? What time do I show up? Am I excused? Like, Buddy handling all of that is huge. So we'll talk about that in the workflow. Coaching and scaling. So what are the different options for there? And then kind of a newer one, which is really germane based on the market that we're living in today, which is we have a lot of buyers on a single team. I think I looked back just in the 2 years I've been here. And we were at like 1.3 buyers 2 years ago, and now we're about 6 buyers in a deal, and not a lot's changed in the deal, but we're just adding a lot more people. So how do you manage them? And I know that you guys, so I'd love your opinion on this as we start to get into that.
Hmm.
All right, so let us jump in and talk about the demo. Vic, I'm going to ask you because you're on the phone, but can you see my screen properly? Does
I
it?
can.
Yeah, okay. If yes, you should see a ghost waving at you, with a Superman cape on or
Mhm.
superhero cape on. Cool.
Yes.
So this is GTM Buddy. This is the web interface. We're going to talk about a couple different interfaces. And one of the things I love about the approach, and this is not a commercial fully for GTM Buddy, and I was talking to someone about this earlier who was comparing us to someone else, and they're like, how much am I going to have to train the folks on like redoing their DNA and redoing their thought process on their muscle memory? And I was like, well, at the beginning of this, it is still a content management tool on top of everything we've added. If you're out looking at HighSpot, Showpad, Seismic, Lego, it's still content management. And there's a library, there's dashboards, there's shares, all of that is still going to be true. And frankly, if I go do a search, and I'm going to use our existing system and I'm going to talk about HighSpot. So if I go do a search, I am going to get content back just like in a traditional content management system, which reps know how to use. A couple of things that are different though about the way that we've handled it now in the world of full-on AI is the first thing you see is your co-pilot or your buddy saying, look, if you're going to compare it, you're in an early stage potentially, and sorry, wrong button. But I can tell you, here's the different things you want to know about HighSpot. Here's the differences. So we're not giving a bunch of documents at this point. What we're trying to do is guidance, which is exactly what a rep needs. If I'm in an early stage deal, I might need 2 or 3 nuggets to share with them about what's happening in the deal. But if I want the content is right here. Now, also a couple of things that are new about this process is the tagging. So it was manual. Used to be we'd have to go look at every asset. We'd have to only do the headline or we would do the title of it. In today's world, we can use a vocabulary that AI can read the documents, read the transcripts of calls, and actually extract the content. So you can see here that in reading this document, we found the words HighSpot in the doc. We also linked it to a competitor. We also knew that because it's linked as a competitor in the vocabulary that we put it in the competition folder. There was nothing anyone did for this. The thing that I think the reps love the most is the ability to see this, which is this is actually the most clicked result of all the assets in here. And it was why it was prioritized from a relevance perspective, because as a rep, we want confidence that other people are using it. So when I see most clicked, interestingly enough, this has the highest seller engagement. So it's viewed, but it wasn't clicked on. So they said, this is good. It's a battle card, but this is the one the reps are interacting with. So not only do I get a perfectly tagged piece of content, but I get a contextual piece of content. I also get a relevant piece of content. And when I click on it, it's now just like every other content management system. It's going to show me the asset. Vic, while this is loading, anything you want to add about that from you? We will show some of your screens, but anything you want to add from your perspective?
No, it's all good stuff. Like you said, it's serving up the most relevant content. I know you'll get into the Ask Buddy piece, which is my favorite, so I won't steal that thunder.
Absolutely. I'm going to let you steal it here in a minute. But at the core of content management is always governance. And when we talk about governance, it's governance on the asset, it's governance on use of the asset, it's governance on when do I know it's the right asset. And so right out of the box, you can see this one's marked internal, meaning not only can I not share it, I can view it, but I can't show it on the screen if I'm on a Zoom call. And if, as Vic mentioned, if I ask the co-pilot for AI, if I'm asking for like, help me write an email, it's going to exclude this asset because it's only for internal use. So even things you're saying internally will not get shared with the outside world. My rep's favorite thing and my favorite thing is this verified section here. So this asset not only was created by product marketing, but sales, in my case, me, has read it. I validate it every 3 months. They know that this asset is good until October 1st. They don't have to go read through it. They don't have to look and see how many times it's been shared. They know from a governance perspective that this is the right version and the right one to use. They've given good star ratings on it, which is awesome. They can see stats on how much has it been used, has it been shared, how well has it performed. So again, just in the realm of confidence. But my favorite thing, and I learned this from a CEO a few years ago, He was writing a sales play. And I was like, how in the world is the CEO of a super busy software company, we're like 300 million in ARR, how do you have time to write a sales play? And he said, Ron, we do about 1,000 deals a month that we're working on. If I could spend 2 hours to affect 1,000 hours of deals, it's a no-brainer. And I was like, okay, fair. And he said, what you want when you do this, what we're trying to scale is getting the CEO, senior leadership, enablement, and product marketing in every deal. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. So here's what I thought was interesting about this. This is a 15-page document. Vic, how much do you think we could train the reps on a 15-page document? How much will they take away from this? What number of nuggets do you think that I won't ask your reps, but just reps in general? How many nuggets do you think we could train them on that they could repeat seamlessly?
You better keep it small.
Yeah, we have an agent on here set at 4. So what
Okay.
we do
I
for
was
our
gonna
reps,
say three to five was my range now. So
yeah, yeah. And so what we did is we said, look, on the realm of how do you get somebody in every deal? Well, here's how you do it. You summarize the document with the salient coaching points. So this is combining all of the training classes. It's combining what the sales leaders say about it. It's combining what product marketing thinks and enablement thinks and combining it into a summary. So every document in here is using AI to say, look, when you're going to talk about the migration overview, talk about transition, talk about cost efficiency, implementation speed, user-centric design, and no cost migration support. That is a very easy chunk of information for them to use. And they can repeat it, they can sound intelligent, which is exactly what our prospects want us to do, which is great. So this is another way, a second use of AI that we've used in GTM Buddy to make it easier on the reps. Now, I do want to show that, Vic, you had talked about this Ask Buddy functionality, and this is your co-pilot. So, and I often think it's interesting when people tell me about pilot co-pilots because they use the analogy totally wrong. Like if you know about flying, when you're the pilot, you're not actually holding the yoke, right? Like what the co-pilot is reading the altimeter and looking at the gauges. They're not steering. Like if you did that, the plane would not be able to work, right? Just like I remember driver's ed teaching my kids to drive. I'd love to have hit the brakes for them and steered, but it doesn't work. The car wouldn't go right. So what this is doing is it's a co-pilot. So the rep can come and ask about certain things. So do you want it about your guru or notion information? Do you want it about your customers? So we've got some agents built here that can narrow it down. But if I just wanted to ask something like a process question, I can ask, how do I run a discovery call? New reps never know what the first step is. So I can ask Buddy, it's going to go read the sales play. So I don't want content. I don't want the document right now. I just can't remember what the first thing is to do. And here's Buddy coming back, just like ChatGPT, but on our LLM and telling me exactly what to do on this. Um, is this what you were talking about, Vic, in terms of how you all have used it and driven adoption?
yeah, it's actually, in my opinion, easier than using the search bar because it's delivering up things I didn't even think of.
Yep, yep. It makes sense. Do your reps have you built agents for them yet on this, or are they just using their own searches?
Yeah, they're just doing their own searches, and then we look at my team takes a look at it about every other week as like what are the top ones to
Hmm.
make sure that we're satisfying those queries. So it hasn't gotten to the point where we build out an agent yet, but we're still evolving.
Nice, cool. So Vic, we were going to show a couple of your screens. Do you want to go ahead and do that now, or do you feel like we've gotten into the discussion enough? How do you want to
Yeah, no,
jump?
I'm fine. I think I shared a few shots of our environment. Just, live demos are always the challenge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As are me trying to click through. Yeah, let's just spend a couple of
You
minutes.
like how I put that right back on you?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, how much do you want to just go through a couple and just talk through what you guys have built?
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where it can be as good as you want it to be, but it's functional right out of the box, right? So don't look at this and say, well, mine's got to look like theirs. I didn't want to take a step backwards as far as the look and feel of our interface, right? Our user experience, and we certainly did not. I think it looks great. It's cleaner, organized for the reps to be able to go in here and find what they're looking for. I do like the fact that it's pretty easy to update. I think that really helped drive the adoption. Once we got the training out of the way of, what's different from this platform versus where we're coming off of, I think it was pretty intuitive in that regard, and a lot of things they liked better.
What I thought was super interesting when I was selling financial software is we tried to get rid of Excel, and people were like, no, augment Excel. When I first started GTM Buddy, I'm like, with all the search, with all this, why do we need a library? And every customer is like, because that's what my reps know. Like
Yeah.
at the basis of it, if you change that, I've got to manage a ton of change management. So that's not the problem. Solve the solved for me, and I'm cool. I need you to solve the unsolved, which is better search, workflow, etc. So
Right.
I just thought it was interesting to show the slide because truly, I mean, it's very Google-like or very SharePoint-like at its foundation without the hassles of it.
I honestly forget that this is even there sometimes. It was our old way of filing. So
Yep.
to your point, Ron, it was to make sure we weren't leaving anybody behind that preferred to find stuff that way.
Yep.
Uh,
And did I say that to you? Because I think I tell everybody don't spend a ton of time on it because you're not going to really go back to it. Did we? I don't remember if we had that discussion.
yeah, I don't know if I believed it at the time, but then when we flipped the switch, it was, a whole new world. So
Yeah, by the way, you and everyone else, everyone. So I've given up on fighting getting Excel out of people's hands and library, but the reaction is very similar to the rest. This one's a good one, the shares one. If you want to spend a minute just going through this, I'm going to then go show some of this stuff live. But I thought this was really interesting.
yeah, really it is. It's having that first hand view of what's being used and who's receiving it, how long it's being spent. So there's a lot of data here that's helpful for us to make decisions on. It's also kind of a proof of yes, it's a good asset or it's not. That
Yep.
the market, the market will tell you what's good and what's not. So just in this case, your salespeople will tell you what's good and what's not. So what's getting shared either internally, externally, and then what kind of bubbles to the top. And you can filter this thing and slice and dice it however you want to get what you want. The other is, I think I had another screenshot that showed some other stats that you can get, but the platform's there, right? The engagement piece
Yep.
that to me is what I've always used. So I was so happy to see that I could still have this vantage point and use. You talked about governance and control of content, and we want to have our reps out there sharing the best, uh, putting the best foot forward with what we're creating for them. So it is a partnership. At the same time, it's a we know best type thing, but then we
Yep.
also have to have the proof points to go with it. So this just gives us that ability to, are we right in our assumptions? And if we're not, what do we need to do differently? And this is the best way to go kind of test your theories.
Yep. Awesome. I'm going to go back to this one for one. I love this. This Great Expression Dental Centers, 22
Mhm.
hours ago, they viewed it 11 times. This is
Right.
awesome. Real deal, qualified deal, no doubt, good confidence, and also shared through Gmail, which is awesome. A lot of reps don't want to necessarily send through email, but
Yep.
we see huge, huge explosion of people using it because they get this feedback instantly. It did resonate. I do feel good and I don't have happy years. Let
Well,
me
I mean that example right there is a one dentist use case for another, right? So they love to see what nobody wants to be the first to do anything.
Yeah.
So that just makes perfect sense, and it's a great indicator.
Love it. Love it. All right. I'm going to jump into a little bit of why we get such high adoption. So we're going to start in a product called Meeting Prep. Now, Meeting Prep was developed because a lot of reps were pushing back on going into the web app where we just were. And what we found is reps will work in Salesforce because we make them or HubSpot. They love to work in their calendar because they're launching deals from their calendar. It's also where they prep because lo and behold, you see a lot of this busy, 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 busy. When do I prep? When do I update Salesforce? When do I do anything? Well, this is me playing guitar, so I get a little break in there. But for the rest of them, they're actually meeting. So let me show you. If I have a discovery call here with Bishop Fox and GTM Buddy, you're going to see your normal interface. It's not different from the reps. They don't have to learn anything new. But when they click meeting prep, This agent is now going to go through and do about 30 minutes of manual labor that the reps would have to do in order to get prep. The first thing that it's doing is contextualize. This is very important. The reps want to know, because Vic just made a very good point. A dentist wants to hear about a use case of another dentist, not a huge group of dentists, not a different kind of doctor. They want to hear like that. So the more we can find people who match our industry, our location, my job title, who I already have competitive, what I want to integrate to, what products I want to buy, and in the early stage, I do want to hear about that. That's what GTM Buddy just did, is it contextualize all of that information to then not make the rep search, but just consume the data that comes from that. So now what I got was 5 perfectly curated pieces of content related to customers who I can name drop. Now, as a rep, how do I know they're perfectly curated? We have the star ranking system, another use of AI. So I know that this is cybersecurity, and I know that this is both of those two products. Now, I also noticed, and Vic, I don't know if you know if the system does this yet, but do you notice this one doesn't have an asset? These two do, and then these two don't. Would you like to guess why those don't show up with assets?
Wow. Is it because they've already been shared with them? Or I don't know. That's just a guess.
Really good guess. Yeah, really good guess. Actually, the reason is that in the contract, we cannot share their information publicly, but we can talk about their story. We just can't share it in writing. So they're allowing us to do this. So that button marked internal, even meeting prep is picking that up saying, got it. We can talk about Zscaler. So I can talk about it. I have customer info of what I can say about them. I just can't share their case study. Where Synac, also cybersecurity and LMS, here's their case study, and I can share it right from there. What I just did, by the way, of finding 5 case studies or 5 customers, knowing whether they're happy, knowing whether I can share their name, there's like a human, at least one, in almost every company doing this type of customer marketing. So that's one thing we can do. And then we can get into all kinds of use cases around products. So if I have a product question, FAQs are going to be the objections they ask me. I can even get into my training resources. So how do we run MedPick? How do I run a qualification call? What's the CMS training demo that I'm supposed to use? Why qualification matters. This is that activation part, Vic, that I had talked about earlier, that enablers love. I'm actually in the call because I'm prepping them. I know they're going to be successful and do a good job. Any feedback or any anecdotes on the meeting prep section, Vic?
That's still one of those where it's I need to get more interviews, more. It's kind of a reminder as you were talking, Ron, like, are they using it? Because in my own instance, I don't have accounts assigned to me, right? So
Yes.
my role is different. So it doesn't always pull up the things. My appointments are usually with vendors as opposed to
Yeah.
end users or customers. So that's one area for us to explore.
Okay. Awesome. Let's go to the next one, which is this one here, which is why are reps going to share? So I'm going to do a follow-up with Anthony coming off of that call I just had. And by the way, Vic, this is what triggered. I saw you had the little Gmail there. This is what triggered that sharing. So if I just want to do things like I want to send a case study, I want to give pricing, top 2 reasons we beat our competitor, I'm now telling GTM Buddy what I'm looking for. So it can be a call that does that. When I click on the content button, it's now reading Bishop, Fox, Anthony, and those 3 things. And what you're going to notice now is first thing I get is a case study. So I can add that. And why did it pick Synac? Because I could share it. That back to my point of I have a deck and I can share it. So there it is added to there. Now I love this one. I talked about it a little bit earlier, but I'm now doing pricing and I'm going to go search for it. And Buddy's like, well, wait a minute, Ron, you're in a qualification stage. You should not share any pricing documents. What you should share is that it's per user per month. And here's the rough pricing. And here's how, let me let it load. Here's how the products it covers. And here's how they get discounts. And that's about all you should do because it's stage 1. You're not supposed to share pricing. And oh, by the way, if you want to listen to a great call, Ron and Brian did this. Brian happens to be a procurement person. I'll pat myself on the back for it. I did a great job of describing our pricing, and Buddy actually scored it high as a relevant asset to share. So I can include that pricing information there, and then back to the buddy sharing what I can ask to help write an email or to ask about a product question, get information that also goes into my email. And once I'm done there, what I then get back from that as a rep, why would reps do this? Is I actually get back information that shows me, here's the email that I sent. I had 3 views for 9 seconds. I know they viewed this document 6 of 6 pages. And if I open it, it's going to tell me that for 9 seconds, and I can get all the way down to the page. So now as a rep, I know what to talk to them about as I get on the next call. So super, super valuable. Vic, you had asked one thing. I want to just clue you into this one because I don't know that you know it yet. But under the analytics section, as you know, we track everything. If you're looking at who's using meeting prep, under the team adoption section, it will show you the shares and the activity by channel. So right now it's all web app for me because that's what I've been on, but you can actually see who's using meeting prep and then get feedback from them. So analytics across the board. We talked about this one as well as the third thing. So how do we teach? How do we coach? And a lot of LMSs are more about your performance review and things like that. And in the GTM Buddy world, what we're focused on is how are we building the rep to be better than they've been? How are we bringing them along from the the things they need to do as a rep? And so where we like to start is this performance analysis. And what this shows is across the rubrics that we care about, we're now scoring them, and I can see my team as my individual team. I can see it against all teams. I can drill into this. I can look at different rubrics, and I can identify where are the areas. I mean, I'm going to stop coaching on personalization because the team's doing a great job. I am going to hammer down on objection handling because we're not doing very good. I can then add some gamification over here and look at it from that standpoint. And I can even use these dashboards to help drive with management for coaching for sales leaders and sales leadership. And this is across 4 different disciplines. So learning. Yeah, thank you for the question on the Q&A. Learning is all self-paced. So how do I do a learning path? Quizzing. Events are all about how do I host a live event and know that they've attended and get their feedback live. Practice is a one direction of them doing a pitch or a demo. And then AI role play is all about how do I train them and prep them. And this one was kind of a funny one, Vic, this discovery call with the CEO. This was mine. I was running a discovery call, and all of a sudden I saw added to the call, Buddy let me know that the CEO was joining. And I was like, that's really strange. So I created a role play. I took his LinkedIn profile and had Buddy read through the LinkedIn profile. And then I practiced it a number of times. And I'll show you, here's my submission where I did really well and it mimicked him really well. But here's the things I wanted to test it on. And when I got on the call with him, he's like, Ron, you were really prepped for the call with me. I played him the role play. And I was like, how did it do mimicking you? And he's like, it did really well. Like, same objections, even down to the point where the role play would stop to look at its phone and not pay attention to me. He said, just like I do. And so I thought that was really interesting. You guys have this coming up on board, correct? This is the kind of next generation.
Yeah, it's the next stage. Really excited about doing that.
Awesome. And then I know you guys are doing this, but the ability to use these digital sales rooms
Mm-hmm.
and interact with these. So the whole idea of being able to see for my whole buying team, what are they looking at? What stage am I in? So I can really work on all my deals at once. But I want to point out a couple things that I think are really interesting. One, the AI builds these dashboards and these oh my God, I just lost my train of thought. Builds these
Digital sales room.
thank you. Yeah, builds these digital sales rooms. So when I told it was Bishop Fox and new cybersecurity, new qualification. So what it built was, here's an introduction to the product. Here's HighSpot, because that was what they were looking at. Here's 4 companies that came off of that existing product. Here's the product videos, but knowing that there was a demo that we were doing. So it's all the content that was relevant for that stage. We also have the ability to drive good behaviors with mutual action plans, both success and tasks. All of the meetings is a great feature. All of the meetings get uploaded here automatically. So not only can you score from the meetings, but you can also share them with your prospects. And I know you and I had a great back and forth using the chat function down here. So here you can share messages back and forth. I was actually doing it from my phone. I think you were doing it from here, but it is available via the web app. And then the last thing I think is amazing is two things. One, the ability to actually look at insights. So when did people log in? How many times? What did they look at? What did they do for the 11 minutes? They even asked a question while they were in there. So you get great insights on what's happening, but you also now can invoke AI here. So if I'm the prospect and I want to know why do people choose GTM Buddy, I don't want to read a bunch of case studies. I just want to see why. The app is going to read through and actually look at all of the case studies in here, any other documents. So it's going to be an Ask Buddy feature, but only on a limited set of an LLM. So I like to say, Vic, and I think I probably said this to you, this is selling when you're not selling, right? And truly, it's a little bit creepy when you would send me a note and I knew you were in there, or you wouldn't even send me a note and I'd say, hey, something you need, or you're looking for something. So
Yeah, I saw you looking at.
yeah, really helpful for a seller.
Yeah.
Um, all right, Vic, anything to add on this? I know you guys are starting to roll these out and build the templates.
Yeah. Yeah, we're almost completely done with the new one. We had one out of the box, worked fine. What I did find was sales reps wanted to customize it way too much. So I got some direction from, we hired a new chief revenue officer, and when she came on board, I said, "Look, do you want this to be a standardized thing for the company?" And she gave me kind of a blueprint from her previous past life of what she liked to see in a DSR, and so we replicated it. I'd say we're about 90% there with it. I
That's
think some of it's being more prescriptive with the content that we want in the initial engagement. And then the rest is the ability to choose what is applicable to the end user or prospect that you're working with.
nice. Yeah. And one of the offshoots you're going to get back for product marketing, because I know our product marketing team asks this all the time, is what assets are success? Like, what do they look at when they first log in? What if we put it on different parts of the page? What happens if you change stages? So there's a lot that those DSRs do to become a huge productivity tool. So Vic, there are questions on here, but we had such a good chat that we ran towards the end of time. But I am going to ask you one other question that was really top of mind for folks, which
Okay.
is just handling the change management. Like, how did you handle people saying, well, is it good enough? I mean, you kind of answered that, but like, what's the single biggest thing you would use as a takeaway on change management?
Yeah, I'd recommend for anybody that has the ability. Now, we did a pretty quick turn, which that was the thing that impressed me the most. Ron kept saying, and I kept thinking it was his sales hat that he had on that, like, yep, we can do it in the time frame you need it done. And I'm like, really? So that was the I was pleasantly surprised there. But if you have the time to stand this up, and I think the biggest thing is to get some users inside that are going to be the ones that are either going to be your biggest critics or your biggest vocal champions to test it out. So what we did was, the first couple of users we put in there, and they ended up preaching to the rest of the team about what a game changer, because it was change management, right? It was going from something, even if only half the people are using it, you're still disrupting somebody's apple cart. So
Yeah,
it's a process change. And you also, my other goal was to double the usage of the sales team. So I had to go out there and win over some people that are like, yeah, we tried that. Are you gonna, you just switched. Is it worth me even leaning in and using this new tool? So having, I think it was about 4 or 5 people that I knew used the previous platform, get their comfort level up and their excitement about what the new features of the new solution would be, and then to get them to go out there and tell people, don't take
yeah,
my word for it. Um, just the things that are coming, and then of course it's delivering on what you say you're going to. Like, we're going to have this by this date, training afterwards, immediate feedback, all the things you would do with a brand new tool. But the change management piece, I'd say get buy-in from some folks that are going to help you sell it internally was the biggest takeaway.
yeah, it's awesome. I love, and I think everyone on the phone should listen to this, was think like a sales rep, because that's the biggest thing. If you really put your sales rep hat on and you look at, like, I'm a perfect example of this. My team's like, how come you won't go into Slack? And I'm because I go to a lot of different places. I can't keep going to places. Like some of it has to come to me a little bit. So I
Mhm.
love thinking like a sales rep is it's awesome. There was one quick one, coaching meeting prep, additional product costs are included in the content repository. So that I did type it in and we will answer all of them, but it is included as part of the content management, the CMS. So it is not additional. Vic, I want to say thank you. Thank you for everyone attended. And Vic, as always, it's been a pleasure, my friend. I hope everything works out well with your puppy. You'll let me know. But good to see
Okay.
you again. Yep. Thank you for taking the time and joining us. And we will talk soon. Thanks, everybody. Take
All right.
care.
Okay.
Bye.